It was Wednesday, October 19th, 2016, just after 7 in the morning. North Oxford was quiet, like another ordinary day. But behind the tinted windows of a luxury penthouse in Summertown, detectives from Thames Valley Police were preparing to move in. For months, they had been watching a man who seemed to have high-end cars, designer clothes, and cash flowing from nowhere. All this wasn't success. It was evidence of one of the largest organized crime operations the region had ever seen. The story that unfolded from that raid would uncover a vast network of Albanian cocaine traffickers, British distributors, and millions in drug money moving through homes, cars, and cafes across the country. This is the story of Khaled, Errol Mima, and Taulant Stoica, and how their web of deception and power finally came crashing down. Welcome to UK Crime Documentaries. Let's get straight into the case. At first glance, Khaled looked like the picture of quiet success. Born and raised in Oxford, he had never drawn much attention growing up. No major brushes with the law, no scandals, nothing to suggest the life that was to come. Locals knew him as the man who drove expensive cars through the narrow streets of Summertown, living in one of North Oxford's most exclusive developments, Scholars Mews. The penthouse he rented cost nearly £3,000 a month. Behind the secure gates, his garage often held a rotation of Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and Range Rovers, each one appearing and disappearing in short cycles. When officers from Thames Valley Police's Serious and Organised Crime Unit began to look closer, they found a man spending far more than he could possibly earn. In just a matter of months, he had blown over £62,000 on luxury car rentals and property leases alone. It was the neighbours who first voiced what police had begun to suspect, that he was living far beyond his means. The tip-offs were small, an offhand remark about his cars, a quiet question about his money. But they were enough to trigger interest from detectives already monitoring drug movements between Oxfordshire and the Midlands. But the money trail didn't end with him. As detectives dug deeper, they realised Udine wasn't acting alone. He was part of something much bigger. What Thames Valley Police uncovered was not a loose group of dealers, but an organised, layered distribution system built to move high-purity cocaine across regions. At the top of the chain was an Albanian-led import network, headed by Errol Mima, who oversaw the flow of cocaine shipments arriving into Europe. We will talk about him in detail later in this video. Immediately below that tier was a UK-based coordination layer. Khaled operated here, acting as the national coordinator who matched shipments to regional networks and managed the onward flow to street-level gangs. The chain was straightforward in concept and sophisticated in execution. Cocaine shipments moved from Albania or via Albanian-controlled routes in Europe into the UK's internal markets via London and onward distribution networks. Those couriers brought kilogram blocks to a set of trusted intermediaries, who used Oxford as a staging post before consignments were relayed to the West Midlands, the South West, and local Oxfordshire dealers. Oxford's location between London and Birmingham, and linked by key motorways, made it the perfect hub for moving drugs across the country. The gang relied on a mixture of low-tech concealment and higher-end counter-surveillance. Vehicles were adapted with hidden compartments to carry drugs and cash, allowing couriers to crisscross county lines with less risk of detection. The organisation used multiple burner phones and a catalogue of anti-surveillance equipment to frustrate conventional policing techniques. Investigators later found around 40 mobile phones across linked addresses, an indicator of compartmentalised communications rather than casual use. In essence, it ran like a well-oiled business, and one of its biggest clients was waiting in the Black Country. Among Khaled network of regional distributors, one of the most organised and profitable operated from the Black Country, a 5-man crew based in Kingswinford. Their operation was small in number but large in reach, responsible for flooding vast areas of the West Midlands with high-purity cocaine. At the top of this group was Craig Davies, then 29, a well-connected local dealer already known for his involvement in high-level drug supply. He had previous convictions for Class A trafficking and now acted as the central link between Udin's Oxford operation and the Midlands street market. Davies managed finances, distribution routes, and client contacts, treating his trade like a tightly run business. Alongside him was David Stokes, a 31-year-old electrician and father of two from Kidderminster. Stokes functioned as Davies's right-hand man, coordinating storage, arranging transport, and overseeing deliveries. Even after arrests began within their circle, Stokes and Davies continued to push forward with shipments, determined to keep the cash flowing. Supporting them was James Bishop, 33, another electrician from Stourbridge, who served as a trusted courier. Surveillance later showed Bishop travelling to Oxford on multiple occasions, where he met directly with Udin or his associates for exchanges of either drugs or cash. For his role, he earned several £100s per trip, but unknowingly became a vital piece of evidence in linking the Midlands gang to Udin's wider network. Jamie Green, 36, from Kingswinford, operated closer to the street level. He oversaw redistribution, moving product from wholesale to mid-tier dealers. Green's arrest came moments after one such exchange. Officers found a kilo of cocaine concealed under his tracksuit top, another £11,000 worth in his car, and £5,500 in his home. The youngest, Callum Bradley, 30, from Ashwood Marina, joined the network later, stepping in after earlier arrests disrupted the flow. His job was to handle local runs and short-distance transfers between drop points, helping to keep the supply chain running smoothly. Their base of operations was Stallings Lane in Kingswinford, a quiet and unsuspecting residential stretch that masked a busy trafficking hub. Each kilo was purchased for around £35,000 from Udin's Albanian contacts, and later resold across the region for more than £100,000 once divided and diluted. The purity ranged from 60% to 91%, making their product some of the strongest available on local streets. Despite operating for only a few months, their network was highly structured, more businesslike than chaotic. They used staggered cash payments, avoided making money and drug exchanges at the same time, and maintained coded communication to reduce exposure. To investigators, the Kingswinford gang represented the perfect middle tier of Udin's empire, efficient, disciplined, and immensely profitable. Evidence gathered from their operations later proved crucial in unraveling Operation Stingray, revealing how deeply the Black Country crew was embedded in a web that stretched from London to Cornwall. When the dust settled, it became clear. The Kingswinford crew wasn't just another regional gang, it was the backbone of Udin's national supply chain. By the mid of 2016, investigators within the Thames Valley Police Serious and Organised Crime Unit were already seeing fragments of something much larger than a local supply ring. Intelligence from financial monitoring, vehicle stops, and community reports all pointed towards an organised movement of cocaine through Oxford and beyond. To connect the fragments, they launched a dedicated probe, Operation Stingray. The scale of the operation reflected the challenge. More than 120 officers were drawn in from across Thames Valley Police, working in coordination with the National Crime Agency and regional forces in the West Midlands and Metropolitan Police areas. The mission to identify, trace, and dismantle the network, moving vast quantities of high-purity cocaine across southern and central England, was clear but far from simple. Undercover teams began tailing Udin's vehicles, high-end cars that moved constantly between Oxford, Birmingham, Bristol, and London. Officers began noticing patterns. The same cars at quiet car parks, same people meeting briefly and leaving in opposite directions. Each meeting lasted only minutes, with quick exchanges of bags or envelopes. Nothing about it was random. Surveillance units installed discrete cameras at strategic points across Summertown and Cowley, capturing Udin's movements in and out of properties later identified as storage or counting locations. CCTV footage soon showed him meeting both Albanian couriers and Midlands buyers, transferring packages and returning to his flat, with plastic bags later found to contain cash. What emerged was the visual thread linking two previously separate investigations. One focused on local laundering, the other on cross-regional cocaine trafficking. A defining moment came outside a Starbucks Café in Summertown. Surveillance officers observed Udine, codenamed Subject 1, meeting with Errol Maymar, logged as Subject 5. Both men exited together, phones in hand, sending messages within seconds of leaving. To police analysts, that single frame of footage confirmed what had long been suspected, that the Oxford hub and the Albanian importation tier were directly connected. From there, Operation Stingray shifted gears. Analysts built detailed link charts of phone calls, financial transfers, and vehicle journeys. Every meeting, message, and route was plotted to map the upper and lower tiers of the conspiracy. The objective was clear: one coordinated strike that would take down the national coordinator, Khaled Udine, and the importer who supplied him, Errol Maymar, in a single operation. At dawn on the 19th of October 2016, after weeks of surveillance, dozens of officers from Thames Valley Police and the National Crime Agency fanned out across multiple counties. Their target list covered 12 properties. The most significant address was the top-floor apartment at Scholars Mews, Summertown, home to Khaled Udine. Early morning, the silence was broken by the sound of a battering ram striking the penthouse door. Officers moved in with precision, and once the search started, it was clear this was no ordinary apartment. Behind wardrobes and inside sealed cupboards, investigators uncovered bundles of cash hidden within false panels and boxed storage compartments. When counted, the total reached £460,000. It was just the start. They found a bulletproof vest, anti-surveillance equipment, and dozens of designer items, including 70 pairs of jeans, each priced between £500 and £700, still with tags attached. Expensive watches and jewellery were scattered among them, clear signs of wealth with no lawful origin. A 10-ton hydraulic press capable of processing and repackaging kilogram blocks into saleable weights was seized from one address. Forensic examination confirmed it had been used to prepare cocaine for distribution. The same morning, simultaneous searches across Oxfordshire and the West Midlands yielded another £90,000 in cash, bringing the total to £560,000, the largest single cash seizure in Thames Valley Police history at that time. The sheer scale of the money convinced detectives they had reached the network's financial core. Forensic teams moved in to catalogue and trace everything. Fibres, DNA, and microscopic residues from the bundles of cash were analysed. The results were decisive. Links were found between the seized currency and vehicles used by known couriers connected to the operation. The evidence bridged the gap between Udine's lifestyle and the broader trafficking network he coordinated. Over 10 kilograms of high-purity cocaine were seized as part of the wider probe, and subsequent financial investigations estimated the group's benefit in the region of millions of pounds. Figures that aligned with recovered cash and the lifestyle evidence gathered at the properties. By the end of the operation, 13 people were arrested across Oxfordshire, the West Midlands, and London. The raid had delivered what the months of surveillance had promised: irrefutable proof of organised crime hidden in plain sight. The firearms link surfaced in August 2016, 2 months before the coordinated raids, when surveillance officers in the West Midlands began tracking a meeting in a Kingswinford car park. The operation had been quietly flagged after intelligence suggested that a weapons handover was planned between two men already known to police. One was Sadakat Ali, a figure with ties to Oxford's drug circuit. The other, Jermal Simpson, a former guardsman suspected of sourcing illegal weapons. Undercover officers watched as both vehicles pulled into the car park and parked side by side. Then, Ali took a small shoebox from Simpson and placed it in the rear of his vehicle before driving off. Moments later, the convoy was intercepted. Both cars were boxed in by unmarked units and searched under warrant. Inside Ali's vehicle officers discovered an Adidas shoebox containing 2 9mm pistols and 12 rounds of ammunition. Beneath the driver's seat was an envelope holding £2,000 in cash, payment, investigators believed, for the weapons. The guns were later identified as self-loading pistols, fully functional and ready for use. As digital analysis followed, detectives traced a series of calls made in the hours surrounding the exchange. The numbers led back to Khaled. He hadn't been physically present, but phone data showed repeated contact between Uddin and Ali before and after the handover. The pattern was enough for prosecutors to argue that Uddin was pulling the strings from a safe distance. By the summer of 2017, at Birmingham Crown Court, Uddin faced multiple charges: 2 counts of conspiracy to supply cocaine, 1 count of money laundering, and 1 count of conspiracy to transfer firearms and ammunition. The prosecution provided all the details with overwhelming evidences to the court. When the verdict came, the outcome was decisive. Uddin was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 16 years imprisonment for the drug and money laundering charges, with an additional 14 years for firearms offences ordered to run concurrently. The combined judgment marked the end of his operation and the collapse of a key tier in the wider supply chain. On the other hand, financial investigators pursued the profits. Under the Proceeds of Crime Act, Uddin's criminal benefit was assessed at £2.016 million, with £541,334 recoverable through seized assets and cash. If unpaid, he faced an additional 5 years in default. But the sentencing didn't end with Uddin only. One by one, the other members of the network were brought before the court, a full chain of distributors stretching from Oxford to the Black Country and beyond. Craig Davies, 30, of Murdoch Drive, was jailed for 15 years and 6 months, while David Stokes, 31, of Tennyson Way, received 14 years and 6 months for his part in the conspiracy. Jamie Green, 35, of Water Street, was handed 9 years and 4 months, and James Bishop, 33, of Vicarage Road, Stourbridge, was sentenced to 8 years. Callum Bradley, 31, from Ashwood Marina, was given 3 years and 8 months. Steve Hutchison, 27, of Ullswater, Bracknell, was sentenced to 9 years and 6 months, and Yaiba Kami, 39, from Edgware in London, received a 10-year jail term. Elsid Kopani, 28, was jailed for 9 years, while Emil Kami, 32, was given 7 years. Emre Kaju, 35, from Streatham, was handed 4 years and 6 months, the same sentence received by Araldo Kami, 23. Finally, Louis Loveridge, 30, of Cornwall, was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison. Together, the gang received a combined total of more than 150 years in prison. As Uddin's distributors faced trial, the investigation was already reaching higher levels. The same intelligence that exposed his network now pointed to the man supplying it, the figure at the very top of the chain. At the top of the chain sat Errol Mime, an Albanian national who had lived quietly in Oxford and Beaconsfield. Mima's position was confirmed through months of covert monitoring. Cell site analysis placed him in constant contact with Uddin and Elsid Kopani, another Albanian operative who handled regional logistics. The footage, presented later in court, would become one of the clearest pieces of evidence linking the Albanian and British arms of the organisation. From June to December 2016, Mima's network functioned like a business. At its core was a corporate-style hierarchy: communication handlers, trusted couriers, and regional agents operating under tight control. Mima's operation didn't just import drugs. It managed an entire wholesale economy of cocaine, supplying groups in Birmingham, the Black Country, and as far west as Bristol. His lieutenants, including Khaled Uddin, Elsid Kopani, and money launderer Michael Palmer, kept the system moving with precision. We have already covered how all the network dismantled during Mima's 2-month hearing at Oxford Crown Court in 2018. Jurors watched hours of surveillance footage, the meetings, the coded phone calls. The the evidence left little room for doubt. The verdict found Mimar guilty on 2 counts of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, and he was sentenced to 25 years in prison, one of the longest terms handed down for such offences in the region. The financial side of the case told a different story. Although police proved the network had laundered millions, the Crown Prosecution Service only moved to seize £14,380, an amount Judge Ross described as risible. The court ruled that Mimar had benefited by £701,680, but only that small sum could be recovered. If he failed to pay, he would serve an extra 3 years and 6 months, a light penalty compared to the scale of his profits. Years later, the case resurfaced for another reason. In 2023, Mimar was among dozens of Albanian offenders transferred back to serve their sentences under a UK-Albania prisoner return agreement. Under Albanian penal rules, his 25-year British sentence was reduced to roughly 15 years, aligning with their domestic maximum for narcotics offences. Later local media in Tirana called him the Lord of Cocaine. Even with Udine and Mimar jailed, another Albanian network was already rising, this time behind a London café. Taulant Stoica appeared to be a devoted family man, a father of 4 who had built a quiet life in the UK. On Leia Bridge Road in Walthamstow, he ran the Milano Café, a modest spot where locals dropped in for coffee and pastries. To anyone passing by, it looked ordinary, just another Albanian-run café in East London. But to detectives, it would soon reveal itself as the centre of something far more serious. Before arriving in Britain, Stoica already had a history with European law enforcement. Court records from Italy showed he was accused of smuggling heroin between the Netherlands and Italy from December 2015 to February 2016. But when that investigation tightened, he vanished, resurfacing quietly in the UK under a false name, where he opened the café as a front. Behind the counter, the real business ran with precision. The Milano Café was more than a coffee shop. Couriers came and went, cash was exchanged, and Stoica sent out instructions using encrypted phones. Surveillance later confirmed that Stoica used the back office to direct multi-kilogram cocaine shipments, moving money through trusted Albanian channels. Bank records told another story. His account showed deposits far beyond what a small cafe could generate, and his phone linked repeatedly to known figures in organised crime. To the public, the cafe was a harmless local spot. But in reality, it was a cover, the front door to one of London's most discreet Albanian trafficking networks. By 2020, Taulant Stoica's quiet operation was thriving under the radar, until a global breakthrough changed everything. That year, law enforcement agencies in Europe and the UK cracked EncroChat. In Britain, the investigation was codenamed Operation Venetic, led jointly by the National Crime Agency and the Metropolitan Police. Stoica's alias was Palefog. For months, he had used it to arrange shipments, track payments, and give precise delivery instructions, all under the belief the system was unbreakable. But that was only a matter of time. Analysis of Stoica's EncroChat data painted the full picture of his operation. Messages recovered showed him ordering cocaine shipments between London and Bristol worth around £1.4 million. He discussed drop-off times, payment arrangements, and updates on deliveries in language that prosecutors later described as the logistics of a criminal business. His communications also exposed his immediate circle. Muhammed Kwasja, 30, acted as his main runner, the one who collected packages and moved them between drop points. Edward Hajini, 39, worked as a courier, ensuring the cash reached the right hands and shipments left on time. Sokol Ajazi, 36, was the driver and assistant, managing vehicle routes and providing cover during transfers. The EncroChat transcripts showed Stoica giving direct orders to each of them, sending postcodes, times, and payment confirmations from the comfort of his cafe office. What he didn't know was that every instruction was already in police hands. The EncroChat leaks gave police everything they needed, coded references that now translated into addresses across London. Surveillance teams moved quickly, turning months of intelligence into coordinated raids. In October 2020, officers from the Organised Crime Partnership, a joint unit of the National Crime Agency and the Metropolitan Police, began tailing Muhammad Kwasja, Stoica's main runner, through the streets of Ilford, East London. The operation ended when unmarked cars boxed in his vehicle during a routine-looking drive. Inside, officers discovered £23,000 in cash, a loaded handgun with 20 rounds of ammunition, and 11 kilograms of high-purity cocaine, valued at more than £1.1 million. When they searched his home, they found that the drugs had been stored in a shocking location, hidden beneath his baby's cot. Kwasja was immediately arrested, later admitting possession with intent to supply and firearms offences. The investigation didn't stop there. In April 2021, Stoica's other associates, Edward Hajini and Sokol Ajazi, were stopped while driving from London to Bristol. Their vehicle contained 1 kilogram of cocaine, but a subsequent search of a nearby garage revealed 3 additional kilos. Evidence also tied Hajini to an earlier delivery of 2 kilos, bringing the total value of drugs linked to the pair to more than £360,000. Both men were arrested and later charged with conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. 2 months later, on the 30th of June 2021, the operation reached its peak. Armed officers arrested Taulant Stoica near his home in Bexley Heath, Kent. He was found carrying 3 mobile phones and £4,000 in cash, with another £12,000 hidden inside his house. The raid marked the end of a man who had once believed his encrypted communications made him untouchable. Faced with overwhelming evidence from EncroChat and surveillance, Stoica pleaded guilty to 3 counts of conspiracy to supply cocaine and 1 count of money laundering. His arrest was described by the Organised Crime Partnership as a major blow to Albanian-led drug trafficking in the capital. In February 2022, the final chapter of the investigation played out inside Woolwich Crown Court. Stoica stood before the judge charged with 3 counts of conspiracy, which we already discussed. The evidence was overwhelming. Above all, the court also heard how Stoica had an outstanding Italian extradition warrant. That background confirmed to prosecutors that Stoica's British operation wasn't an isolated scheme. It was part of a wider European trafficking network. After sentencing, officials from the Organised Crime Partnership said the case showed how targeting those higher up the supply chain has a significant local impact. Taulant Stoica was sentenced to 10 years in prison, marking the end of his operation. Alongside him, Muhammad Kwasja received the same term, 10 years behind bars. Edward Hajini was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment, while Sokol Ajazi was handed a 5-year sentence for his role in the conspiracy. What do you think about the cases and the sentences? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take. And if you found this breakdown informative, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode of UK Crime Documentaries.